Have you ever been in one of those meetings? Like a really chaotic one, where the timeline is slipping, the budget is totally blown, and everyone is just shouting over each other trying to fix it with more noise.
Oh, yeah. The classic panic room scenario. Everyone just assumes that if they talk louder, the problem somehow solves itself.
Exactly. And in that room, there's often one person sitting in the corner. They haven't said a word for 45 minutes.
Right. They aren't checking their phone. They aren't taking furious notes or anything.
They're just watching. And then, just when the team is about to sign off on a completely disastrous plan, this person raises a hand and asks
One quiet question.
one single quiet question that just sucks the air right out of the room. Because everyone instantly realizes there is a massive flaw that nobody else saw. That's the moment we are talking about today.
It's a really powerful dynamic. It's that sudden realization that while everyone else was busy talking, this person was busy seeing.
Today, we're unpacking exactly who that person is. We are doing a deep dive into the SSFU Inside Awakener.
A very specific, a very fascinating profile.
It really is. It comes from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. And honestly, looking at the source material, this feels like we're analyzing a specific character class in an RPG. Like the high-level mage who barely moves, but casts the single most critical spell.
That's actually not a bad analogy at all. The SSFU profile operates almost entirely beneath the surface. If you want to understand the operating system of someone who can spot a lie, or a logic gap, or a structural point of failure from a mile away, this is the deep dive for you.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts of their brain, let's set the stage. We're working with the Max Energy ME80 system here. For the listener who maybe missed our previous dives, give us the quick elevator pitch. What exactly are we looking at?
Sure. So most personality tests you might take online, they look at behavior. They ask things like, do you like parties? Or do you organize your desk?
Right. Very surface level.
Exactly. The Max Energy system is different. It's a framework for understanding human energy architecture. It looks at the underlying currents that drive those behaviors. It explains why we process information the way we do, breaking us down into energy flows of input, processing, and output.
And today, we are focusing specifically on the SSFU profile, which stands for the Inside Awakener.
Correct. The Inside Awakener.
Let's look at their identity and core declaration from the report. It says, catches truth in moments of shock, turning disruption into awakening.
It sounds a bit intense.
It sounds incredibly dramatic, moments of shock.
It does sound dramatic, but you have to think about the mechanism. The report defines their main activation trigger as catching anomaly.
Okay, catching anomaly.
Yeah. Most people, when they walk into a room or look at a spreadsheet, their brains are wired to look for harmony. They look for patterns they recognize because they want things to make sense.
Confirmation bias, basically.
Yeah.
We see what we expect to see.
Precisely.
Oh.
But the SSFU is wired completely differently. Their attention is naturally magnetically drawn to disharmony. They don't look for what fits. They look for what doesn't fit.
So are they just looking for trouble then? Is this the person who enters a room and immediately critiques the paint job?
No, it's deeper than critique. And they aren't necessarily looking for it intentionally. It pulls at them. Imagine a detective walking into a crime scene.
Okay.
They don't notice the furniture that is standing perfectly straight. Their eye unconsciously snaps to the one book on the shelf that is tilted just 3 degrees to the left.
That makes sense. They see what's out of place.
They sense logic breakpoints and emotion gaps. If someone's tone shifts just a fraction during a negotiation, or if a business plan has a tiny logical inconsistency in paragraph 4, the Inside Awakener feels it physically. It's like a pebble in their shoe.
Man, that sounds exhausting, to be honest. If you're constantly seeing everything that's wrong, everything that's out of place, how do you not just lose your mind? How do they control this input?
That's the crucial question. If they reacted to every anomaly immediately, they would just be anxious wrecks. But the report highlights a very specific global view or control philosophy they use to manage this. It's called decomposition.
Decomposition. Usually when I hear that word, I think of compost heaps. I assume we mean something more cognitive here.
We do. In this context, decomposition means breaking a complex situation down into its absolute raw components. The report says they do not rush to give answers. This is a massive key differentiator.
They aren't the person who shouts, "That's wrong," the second they see a flaw.
Not at all. They sit on it, they decompose cause and effect, they separate the noise from the signal. The source material has this really poetic phrasing. It says they start from a place of uncertainty.
They are comfortable not knowing the answer yet.
Yes. They wait, They let the overlooked clues gradually surface.
That requires a ton of discipline. Most of us, especially in the business world, we're trained to have an answer right now. What's the solution? Fix it. You're saying the inside Awakener operates on a totally different clock?
A completely different clock. They believe that if you wait and observe, the truth will self-display through alignment. Essentially, if you wait long enough, the lies and the fluff will crumble away and the truth will be the only thing left standing.
So they aren't forcing the truth out. They're just waiting for the non-truth to expire.
Exactly. It's almost a passive strategy, but in the most powerful way possible.
Let's pop the hood and look at the engine then. The Max Energy system talks about an energy matrix, the IP, IQ, and EQ layers. This is the technical stuff. How is the SSFU wired up internally?
The overarching theme here is an extremely strong inward integration characteristic. If you picture an energy map, some people are exploding outward, projecting energy constantly.
The extroverts of the energy world.
Right. But the SSFU is like a gravity well. They absorb complex external signals and pull them inward into a stable logic framework. They are processing everything inside for what the report calls secondary decomposition.
Okay, let's break down those 3 layers. First is the IP, the inner value layer. This is usually what drives a person, what they value most at their core.
For the SSFU, the IP mechanism is defined as stable accumulation activation.
Stable accumulation. That sounds like a long-term savings account.
In a way, it is, but instead of money, it's data. It's truth. Their sense of value comes from gathering, holding, and stabilizing information. They are collectors of reality.
But notice the word stable.
Exactly. They aren't just hoarding random facts like a trivia champion. They're collecting the structural building blocks of a worldview. They don't feel the need to project this outward immediately. The value for them is in the internal solidity of what they know.
So they really don't need the external validation of, hey, look how smart I am.
Rarely. The satisfaction is entirely internal. Just knowing they have captured the truth is the reward.
Let's move to the second layer, the IQ layer, the emotional activation layer. This is where I got a little tripped up reading the report.
It's definitely the most counterintuitive part of this profile.
Right. The mechanism is listed as experience and verification judgment. To me, verification judgment sounds like a logical process, not an emotional one. How is that their emotional layer?
That's the paradox of the Insight Awakener. Their emotional system is inextricably tied to verification. Think about how most people process emotion. I feel happy because I got a compliment, or I feel sad because it's raining.
Stimulus response. Very straightforward.
The SSFU processes feelings through a lens of truth. They ask, is this true? Is this verified? They don't just feel happy, they feel aligned. Their emotional intelligence activates when they can verify facts against their experience.
Give me a real-world example of what that looks like.
Okay, imagine someone tells an SSFU, I love your work, you're the best employee here. A normal person feels happy. The SSFU immediately runs a verification check.
Does this match my performance data?
Exactly. Is this person saying this to get something from me? Is this factually accurate?
And if it doesn't match?
Then they don't feel happy. They feel emotional, static, or dissonance. Even if it's a compliment. If it can't be verified, it feels bad. But on the flip side, when they solve a complex puzzle, or when they find the missing piece of data that explains a systemic failure.
That gives them a rush.
Yes. That gives them a massive emotional satisfaction. They literally get an emotional high from fact-checking and aligning reality.
That explains so much about the people I'm picturing in my head right now. It explains why they can seem cold to others. They aren't reacting to the social fluff, they're reacting to the data validity.
Precisely. They filter emotion through logic.
Okay, let's look at the third layer, the EQ, or decision calculation layer. This is how they decide to act.
This is the emotional expression and release mechanism.
Wait, hold on. Their decision layer is where the emotion releases? I thought we just said their emotion layer was logic.
I told you it's a complex architecture. Think about the pressure building up in that IP layer, all that accumulation, all that holding of information.
Right.
Then think about the IQ layer. Constantly verifying, checking, scrutinizing. That creates a massive amount of internal pressure.
Like a pressurized tank.
Exactly. So making a decision, actually doing something or saying something out loud, is the release valve. For an Insight Awakener, speaking up isn't just sharing an idea, it is an act of emotional release. It's venting.
So when they finally raise that hand in the meeting,
it's because the pressure of the truth inside them has become greater than the pressure to stay silent. It suggests that their decisions are not cold calculations, even though they are based on data. The act of deciding is a release of built-up energy.
That puts a whole new spin on their communication style. They aren't trying to be right to stroke their ego. They are trying to relieve the pressure of seeing something that's wrong.
Yes, which brings us perfectly to the manifestation layer. This is how all of this internal wiring looks to the outside world. The report says their energy operates inward.
Meaning they carry, absorb, and integrate.
Right. To you or me, looking at them across the boardroom table, they might appear quiet, passive, maybe even checked out or bored.
You look at them and think, why isn't he saying anything?
But that passivity is a total mirage. There is massive kinetic energy, but it's all happening under the hood.
Like the old duck on a pond metaphor. Calm on the surface, paddling like crazy underneath.
It works, but maybe think of it more like a server farm. From the outside, it's just a quiet room with a low hum. Inside, it's processing petabytes of data per second. It's static on the outside, hyperactive on the inside.
I love that. Let's zoom in on that inner trait we touched on earlier, anomaly catching. The report sums it up with a great phrase. It says, "Where's off, stop first to look."
This is their default setting, and it's often where they clash with other personality types. When an event happens, say quarterly sales drop by 10%, the Insight Awakener habitually slows down.
Which drives the action-oriented types absolutely crazy.
Oh, it drives them nuts. The action type wants to do something immediately. Launch a promo, call the clients, pivot the strategy. The SSFU stops. They have a fundamental skepticism of the first layer explanation.
So if the boss says sales are down because it's a holiday week, the SSFU doesn't buy it.
They might buy it eventually, but they won't accept it without checking. They think, that's the easy answer. But I noticed the customer service logs have a weird spike in complaints on Tuesdays. Why Tuesday? That doesn't fit the holiday theory. They confirm every clue through continuous observation.
The benefit here seems really obvious. While everyone else is running around trying to fix the wrong problem,
the SSFU stays clear-headed. They are slowly piecing together a complete judgment framework. They don't want to fix the symptom. They want to identify the root cause pathology.
But every superpower has a kryptonite. We have to talk about the shadow blind spots. What happens when this system goes wrong?
The report calls this over-decomposition. The core maxim here is, the deeper you think, the harder to move.
Analysis paralysis.
On steroids. Because they maintain this high awareness long-term, they start to view normal fluctuations as potential problems. They basically lose the ability to turn the anomaly detector off.
They see a shadow and assume it's a monster.
Right. To avoid misreading a situation, they keep delaying their conclusion. They want 100% certainty. And as you know, 100% certainty rarely exists in business or in life.
So they get stuck in the gathering phase and never hit that release phase we talked about.
Exactly. And I'm sure you can imagine that makes communication incredibly difficult. If you're stuck in your head, how do you talk to people?
It must be frustrating for them and their team.
It is the most common complaint from colleagues of SSAs. The report notes a very specific communication breakdown. Because their thinking connects dots so quickly, jumping from A to M to Z internally, they often skip the middle reasoning when they speak.
So they just blurt out the conclusion like, this project will fail in 6 months.
Yes. And everyone else looks at them like they're crazy, because everything looks fine right now. The SSFU has done the complex math in their head, but they didn't show their work to the class.
That is a guaranteed recipe for being misunderstood.
It is. And here is the real tragedy of the shadow phase. If they are misunderstood, or if the result underperforms, they don't usually fight back. They fall into a self-doubt loop.
Oh.
They start checking, where did I misread? Did I miss a clue? This consumes huge amounts of energy. They basically burn out from the inside, reanalyzing their own analysis without ever taking external action.
So they just retreat further into the cave.
Exactly.
Let's pivot to how this plays out socially, because I think we've all met this person at a dinner party or a team lunch. The report calls their social relationship style puncture appearance.
One question makes the scene go quiet. We referenced this in the intro. Socially, they are usually quiet observers. They don't rush to state opinions on politics or sports or whatever the small talk is.
But they excel at proposing that one question at the critical moment that touches the absolute core of the issue.
They do. It's a double-edged sword, though, isn't it? Being the person who punctures the balloon.
It has to be. On the positive side, they prevent big mistakes. They save the group from driving off a cliff. But on the negative side, well, nobody likes a buzzkill.
Right. They can make others feel questioned or scrutinized. If you're always the one pointing out the flaw, people can start to feel like you're attacking them personally, not just the plan.
The report has a really great line about this. It says their unique position is being needed while keeping distance.
That sums up their social role perfectly. People need them for the truth, but might keep them at arm's length because the truth is uncomfortable. They are the consultant you hire when your business is in trouble, not necessarily the guy you invite to karaoke night.
So let's talk brass tacks. If you are a business leader or you're building a team, why do you need an SSFU? What is their specific business value?
The report defines their value as blind spotlighting. That is their core advantage. Every organization, no matter how successful, has black areas.
Processes that are broken but nobody looks at because they're too busy.
Or processes that are running on pure autopilot. Decisions based on, well, that's how we've always done it. The Insight Awakener interrupts habitual operations.
They disrupt the status quo.
But not just for the sake of disruption. This is an important distinction. They aren't rebels just trying to cause chaos. They disrupt for the sake of correction. They integrate scattered clues to provide evidence for long-term correction.
They're the ones who say, we've been doing it this way for 5 years, but the market has shifted, and here is the data proving we are slowly bleeding out.
That kind of insight is invaluable.
Given that, where do we actually put them? If I have an Insight Awakener on my payroll, and I put them in a pure sales role where they just need to blindly push a product with a smile, they're going to be miserable.
They will burn out in a month. You want to place them where identifying logic gaps and sensing bottom-layer trends is the actual job description. The report suggests 4 highly recommended professional fields.
Hit me. What are they?
First is risk control and review. Anything involving compliance, safety, or financial auditing. You want them spotting what the naked eye misses.
Naturally, that's a perfect fit.
Second is research analysis and strategy planning. Because they can sense trends from fragmented info before anyone else sees the pattern, they are excellent at long-term strategy. They see the iceberg way before the ship hits it.
Okay, what's the third?
Third is quality management and process optimization. Staying alert to those really subtle standard deviations in a manufacturing line or a software code base.
And the fourth?
Strategic consultant, serving as that external cool questioning role where they are explicitly paid to poke holes in the plan. If you give them permission to be the skeptic, they completely thrive.
They're essentially professional troubleshooters.
Truth seekers. They are the guardians of reality in a business world that often prefers comfortable illusions.
I think that leads us perfectly into the conclusion. It's so easy to see these types as critical or distant, or even a bit arrogant with their silence. But the source material really emphasizes that that is a complete misinterpretation.
Completely. Their role isn't judgment, it's protection. The report ends with a really beautiful gold sentence that sums this all up. It says, when insight no longer just stays discovering but drives system turning, Insight Awakener's sharpness and calm becomes key force, letting world awaken.
Letting the world awaken. That's a pretty heavy responsibility.
It implies that their insight isn't just a parlor trick. When applied correctly, it actually turns the system. It changes the entire direction of the ship. But it requires them to speak, and it requires the rest of us to actually listen.
So here is my final thought, my takeaway for you, the listener. Next time you are in that chaotic meeting, or even just at a family dinner, and someone asks a quiet question that makes the room go dead silent, don't get annoyed. Don't roll your eyes and think, here we go again.
No, stop and listen to them.
Ask yourself, what anomaly did they just see that I completely missed? Because they might just be saving you from a disaster you haven't even spotted yet.
Exactly. Embrace the pause. That uncomfortable silence is where the actual value is.
That wraps up our deep dive into the SSFU Insight Awakener. As always, this analysis was based on the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It's such a fascinating lens to view the people around us.
And if you found yourself nodding along today thinking, wait, that's me, or, oh, wow, that's my quiet business partner, you might want to dig deeper into this system. It really helps to have the operator's manual for your own brain.
You can learn more at the official website, www.maxenergylife.com. Or you can search for Max Energy and a Cantor vs. SE on Facebook.
It's definitely worth the look. Understanding your own energy architecture changes everything about how you work and live.
Thanks for listening. Keep your eyes open for those anomalies. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Goodbye.